Conversations That Matter is a partner program for the Centre for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University. The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you.
Welcome, Kathy McLaughlin. You have been in that rare place in life where you were cradled in the arms of death and somebody reached in and pulled you back.
Yeah.
What's it like knowing that you were there? How did it change you?
I mean, it's terrifying. There's no two ways about it to actually realize that this could be it. And I think what changed me through all of that was the ability to step back and really think about how I'm spending every moment, even at that moment, especially at that moment, I guess, when I thought this could be my last, or I might not come out of this surgery, which is mostly the thoughts that I had.
So let's go to that, first of all, because anybody who's watching is going, well, what happened to it? What happened to you? Like, how close were you to not being here today?
Probably closer than I actually knew, because the doctors are astounded that I'm actually here talking to you now. And there were, comments afterwards like, miracles do happen, or, mission impossible accomplished. And I had never thought it was mission impossible, but clearly the doctors did.
Wow. Well, okay, let's rewind the clock a little bit. You get diagnosed with cancer.
Yes, that was 20 years ago.
20 years ago?
The first diagnosis, yeah.
So what happened then?
That was a big wake-up call, but it was a short-lived one. It was only about a 4-month process for me. It was early. It was stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was, self-professed workaholic at the time. I was in the process of starting up a new cell phone company, which everyone knows now as Fido. And I really had just been on the job maybe a couple of months, and I was diagnosed, also just turned 40, diagnosed with stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma. The treatment for that was 4 months of chemotherapy, so 8 rounds of chemotherapy that I had to go through. So I managed to schedule those on Friday so I didn't miss a lot of work, recover all weekend, and come back to work on Monday, because we had a lot to do. We had to set this, I know, right? Huh? I know. But, I took it seriously, and I did a fair bit of soul searching through that 4-month journey, because when you're sitting in the chemo ward with, the IV, and you really have to slow down and think about things. And I really took to heart, what are the messages that I'm giving myself, or that my body is giving me, about the way I've been living my life.
So what were those messages, and how did they influence you when you return to normalcy? Well,
to be honest, I'd already sort of dealt with them, and I guess in hindsight, I almost had this premonition, or saw it coming, because I was in previously to going to Fido, I had been in an environment that for me was toxic. It was a large corporate situation, and I don't deal well in those situations. So I, made plans to go. I left to go to Fido, which was a company that at the time was much more aligned with my values. Loved the people who were starting it up, and it was actually a great scenario for me. But it was 2 months later that I got the diagnosis. So I know in some ways I was under so much stress that I allowed myself to be invite the conditions to be sick. It was what my brain was telling me about being in that environment. That, like, I was in survival mode. I could feel my adrenaline going crazy. I knew I was just physically under stress because of the mental stress. And so, I just didn't escape soon enough. I mean, Bernie Siegel actually in his book talks about trigger events that happen a year and a half or 18 months prior to you getting diagnosed with cancer. Another radical thought, but for me, if I went back 18 months, it was probably the worst era of my career for a variety of reasons.
What's interesting, though, is, okay, so you start to deal with this and you think, okay, I got my life back. Getting out of that toxic, stressful environment would be
job one for me.
Job number one. But now you get things back on track.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the story doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't. No, and for 7 years I was trucking along nicely. I mean, things changed for me in the Fido environment. It got to be a bigger corporate situation, and I recognized that, again, this is not somewhere I wanted to be. So I changed careers a couple of times, and I was dealing with it as if the one path I had to fix or get right was work, and it wasn't just about that.
As riveting as this is, I got to get you to hang on for a second while we take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Conversations That Matter is a not-for-profit program made possible thanks to the charitable support of the following and from viewers like you. Please visit conversationsthatmatter.tv and help us to continue to produce this program.
So I was continually making other plans, and then it was 7 years after my first diagnosis when I was inadvertently diagnosed with a recurrence of the cancer.
Inadvertently?
Yeah.
Is that because of the way that you found out?
Yes, it was, because ever since I'd had chemo, my big toenails kept falling off every year, just prior to sandal season, which was really annoying. And so I finally took the bull by the horns and decided to go and see my GP and figure out if I had a fungus or something and that they could fix it. He said, well, you might, but the first thing is you have to have a blood test to determine if you're okay to take the medicine, because it can be harsh on your internal organs. So I went for the blood test, and then I got the call from the doctor's office saying, come on back, doctor wants to see you now. But I went in to see him, and he said my liver enzymes were 8 times normal, like ridiculously high. He said, if I didn't see you sitting here across from me looking relatively healthy, I would think these were the test results of a very, very sick woman. I went, okay, so you have the wrong person, the wrong test. But then I was plunged into 3 or 4 months of toxic diagnosis. I was put through all kinds of, I had a laparoscopy biopsy that went south and ended up creating an infection. And at the end of 3.5 months, they still had not figured out what was going on. Something was wrong with my liver, and the doctors suspected maybe the cancer was back. But finally, I'm lying in my hospital bed after this bad biopsy, and the GP comes back to see me, and he spent half a day in there reading my binder. He read the binder and he said, so, I guess you know what's happening. And I went, no. And he said, well, you have a relapse of your Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it's stage 3.
So you have cancer again.
I have cancer again.
And your liver's in trouble.
Well, I thought he meant that the liver was in trouble because of the cancer and it had progressed to my liver. And he said, but that's not all. It's not that. You actually have end-stage cirrhosis of the liver, stage 4.
End stage.
End-stage cirrhosis of the liver that is not related to the cancer. You have 2 parallel and separate diseases.
Either which could kill you.
Both were going to kill me because they were end stage. Like stage 3 is pretty serious cancer. And the worst part was they were accelerating each other. So somehow feeding off each other and racing to the finish. That's how I put it.
So in that moment, what do you start thinking about your life in that moment?
I thought, what is it that I haven't gotten right? Because
that's where you went.
That was the first thing. I don't know, not everybody would go there, right? For me, it was always about what do I have to get right to heal myself? Because I truly believe in the magic of the body and its ability to heal itself if you get it right. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was the other path. It wasn't the work path. It was the personal relationships path, and it was the spiritual path. Those 2 things that I'd sort of avoided going into in any depth in the first round.
So you start to follow a traditional medical protocol,
right?
But at the same time, you embrace complementary and alternative therapies.
Well, I kind of had to, because after that GP visit, when he said you've got these 2 things going on, I went back to see the gastroenterologist, the liver guy, and he said, we can't. The only treatment for your liver at this point is transplant, but you're not eligible because you have cancer. You have to deal with the cancer first. So I went to see the oncologist, and he said, I can't help you because the only treatment for a stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma will kill your liver. That was the point at which I went, okay, I guess we have to find another way, maybe in conjunction with or maybe around the medical system, because they're not being all that helpful right now. And they weren't even talking to each other, right? So
if I do this, I die. If I don't do that, I die. If I do this, I die.
Right.
If I don't do that, I die as well.
Right. So yeah, exactly.
And you're thinking, what haven't I got right?
Well, yeah, I'm still thinking, no, I'm thinking 2 things. One is, we'll find another way, because my mind is like that. I mean, I love...
We'll find another way.
I love being faced with an insurmountable challenge. It's sort of what drives me in life. And obviously this is the ultimate, right? So
yeah.
I know maybe there's a screw loose, but I was never sort of the poor me. I mean, there were moments when I thought, okay, this really sucks. But
were you scared?
I was scared to death, so to speak. Yes,
yeah.
But I also, I mean, until somebody's actually shut all the doors, I'm still looking for one to open, right? And so I did that I went straight to Inspire Health, which is a complementary care facility.
Specializing in cancer.
Yes, yeah. They were extraordinarily helpful. I mean, in the book, it talks about the 11 things that they recommend that have been proven to create conditions for spontaneous remission in cancer patients.
Right, and this is work that they're doing with BC Cancer as well. So it's
Correct.
not like they're like
No,
out
they're
of the box woo-woo kind of
mainstream.
stuff. Yeah, yeah.
It's and they work, exactly, in
Yeah.
conjunction with medical systems. So the first thing they do is they figure out everything. They read my binder, and then they talk to your physicians. So they talk to the specialists and sort of get a real reading on what's going on. They actually got the specialists talking to each other. And then they recommend a regime of complementary therapies. So for me, it was, I would say the really most important one of everything they recommended was meditation and visualization. And I'll talk more about that. But they also recommended nutrition, a whole different diet approach. There was even an experimental clinical trial that they put me on more for shoring up the immune system so I could tolerate eventually chemotherapy, which they figured out with the doctors.
I am on the edge of my seat, but unfortunately we've got to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Conversations That Matter is a not-for-profit program made possible thanks to the charitable support of the following and from viewers like you. Please visit conversationsthatmatter.tv and help us to continue to produce this program.
So they got to keep your liver alive.
Yeah.
They got to try and arrest the cancer.
Right.
Or slow it down because they can't give you anything that's going to kill it.
No, that's right.
And through this process, what are you learning about yourself?
I guess I'm learning I'm more resilient than I thought. I'm actually
That's
learning.
a good feeling.
It was good. It was good. I'm learning that I need to slow down and actually, be in the moment with people and really connect. And this is one of the lessons from Inspire Health, but it was also something I just found immensely gratifying was to actually, because you don't know in this situation if you're going to actually be here next year. So I had to take time off work.
You had no choice.
Yeah, but I also just took time in every moment with every transaction with my kids, just enjoying everything that presented itself, even sitting in the hospital waiting room, trying to connect with other people and trying to cajole the nurses into having a better day, that kind of thing. Just turn the crank.
Because that's better than being dead.
It's better than being dead.
Yeah.
It reinforces why you're there and why you're alive. It's kind of all about that.
So you were taking on this CAMS or complementary and alternative approach. So what starts to happen to your health that now puts you in a position where you become eligible to
so
to undergo the treatments that can actually get you?
So it bought me some time, for one thing. It got me into a much better mindset because the main thing is, and they talk about this at Inspire Health, is when you feel more in control of your situation, it actually turns a switch so that you actually can be in a better position to heal.
Yeah.
And part of that is your positive attitude and its impact on your physicians. So I was better able to go back to the oncologist and say, maybe we can find a way. Or initially went back to the gastroenterologist and said, I'm not going to settle. Let's try and figure this out and see if there's something we can do to shore up the liver to be able to tolerate something, and then they'll figure it out over here. So, and getting them talking to each other.
So were you in a position where you had to get your liver healthy enough to be able to take chemo?
Yes.
You had to take the chemo so that your cancer was in a good enough position so that you get a liver transplant. Was that kind of the order?
That was the order. As we learned as we went along, that was the sequence of events. So
so how did you bolster your liver?
Well, that was where the complementary therapies really came in. So lots of nutrition, vitamin therapy, this autoimmune booster, a couple of different things that they gave me that were autoimmune boosters, and then visualization.
Visualization.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you get to the point where
I'm healthy enough.
You're healthy enough to undergo a form of chemotherapy.
Yeah. Yeah, and they exactly. So they also put me on steroids. So that was ultimately the medical treatment for the liver condition. And that was by no means certain. So everything I was doing, I'm sure, still contributed to the fact that at the end of the steroid regime, even though it was prednisone that made me loopy, I came out of that being less loopy and more fortified. And then, and only then, the oncologist said to me, okay, I'm willing to try something. It can't be the original treatment that they would have given for advanced Hodgkin's lymphoma because it was still too toxic. So what he tried was experimental, right? So you're going, okay, well, let's try this because, you know, it's never worked for anybody, but it might, right? Well, and he was...
And you're in such dire straits that we can afford to take the chance.
Yeah, well, I had to, right?
Or you were going to die.
I also did, and this is something, you know, I talk about in the book, is being an intelligent and forceful patient, not belligerent, but positively assumptive patient. I got 3 different opinions on the chemo.
Yeah, you have to advocate for yourself, don't you?
Exactly, yeah.
This is an extraordinary story, but I've got to get you to hang on for just 1 second while we take our final break. We'll be right back.
Conversations That Matter is a not-for-profit program made possible thanks to the charitable support of the following and from viewers like you. Please visit conversationsthatmatter.tv and help us to continue to produce this program.
Okay, so now it's time. They get the cancer under control.
Yes.
Now it's time to get a liver transplant. You get the liver transplant.
Well, you should, there's a piece in between, because when I said I'm ready for the list, they said, oh, wait another 4.5 years, because you have to be in remission for 5 years before you can be put on the list.
But your liver's not going to last that long.
No.
Okay.
Well, I just made sure that it was. I mean, I had no choice, right? Again, so that's where, again, the complementary therapies, all kinds of visualization, doing it, whatever it took to protect what was left of it.
Did you have to wait the 4.5 years?
I did, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I
So
did.
you eked out every little inch of life that there was in your liver.
Pretty much. I think probably the worst phase for me was the end stage of the liver before I got put on the list. Because when you're in that stage, people with liver disease, you're retaining water. So I was like gaining up to 30 pounds of water every week. I would have to go and get that drained 3 times a week to be able to even walk because my lungs were compressed. So, I mean, it gets wretched. And then I had hepatic encephalopathy, which is the flushing of ammonia into your brain, which
Were
is
there times where you're starting
fatal.
to think, I'd rather die than go through this?
Yeah, that was when I was thinking.
You were ready,
because
ready to go.
There was no guarantee I would ever make it to the list. 30% of the people in those years were dying before they got there. And even on being put on the list, they were still dying before the liver came available. So it was tough times, yeah.
Holy smokes.
That was when I really had to call into play, you know, all of the mustering of, you know.
There's got to be another way.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, then I finally got put on the list.
Oh my gosh, how you had the energy, the drive to keep going. You know.
Yeah, and I was still working through most of that.
You were still working.
Yes, I was. But, you know, not to make light of it, I was very, very ill, and I, you know, finally got put on the list. And that year, it was a dry spell for organs. There was an ambulance strike. It had been, by the time I got the call, it had been 7 months with no livers available in BC at all.
Yeah, but then you get the call. You must be thinking, okay, I made it.
Yeah, I made it. Yeah, that's what you think.
I made it.
That's what I thought, yeah.
But?
Well, I get in.
This is the never-ending story.
Yeah, exactly. It goes on and on. So I have the surgery. It's 19 hours. It's a marathon. You know, there were several surgeons involved. Again, they had the hemorrhaging issue, and you know, I almost.
You could have died there.
I almost did.
Yeah. They could have walked away.
They could have walked away.
Yeah.
But they didn't. So I got out of that, felt like I'd been hit by a truck. But, you know, in typical type A patient fashion, I'm up and walking in a couple of days. And the liver's taking beautifully, and everything is fantastic. I'm eating well, and you know, a couple of weeks go by, and I'm ready to go home. And I literally had started packing my bag, and then I didn't know what was happening, but all of a sudden my hemoglobin went down, and they started having to give me transfusions. And I said, "Is this normal?" And they said, "No, there's something, but we don't know what it is.
Something's not right.
Something's not right." And then I lapsed into a coma. I actually remember falling on the bathroom floor. And the next thing, I knew, I woke up and I had surgery again. And I'd actually had a second transplant.
Of a liver?
Of a liver. And they had called my husband aside and said, she has 48 hours. Her liver has died. It's hemorrhaged to the point that we can't salvage it. And if she doesn't get another liver in 48 hours, you need to make other plans. That was like, you know, I still can't think about that without crying. And I was asleep. Yeah. I didn't have to hear that.
Right.
Right? But he did. And my family had to really make plans for the worst. So they put a call out through North America, you know, to vicinities that can actually fly from, get it in there in time. And lo and behold, they found a liver. I was told
blood
later.
type, right, everything.
Yeah, right size and everything.
Yeah.
And I was told it had been slightly traumatized, so it obviously had been an injury of some kind. So it wasn't ideal, but it was a liver, right? So I was told later. So they, again, another marathon surgery, and it was such a bad candidate for more surgery at that point, because obviously, they're keeping me alive on life support, and I'd been, anyway, they got through it. Again, probably all the surgeons in the hospital are involved at some point, and I wake up not knowing any of it, and I'm horrified to be back in ICU, intubated, and like I'd been hit by a truck, and I still had no idea what had happened, like none whatsoever. And it took me 3 days to figure it out, because they all knew what happened. The nurses never say, "Oh, by the way, you had a second transplant." They just say, "Oh, you're doing really well," and I'm going,
Yeah.
Like I couldn't use my arms and legs. I was that sick from the surgery, and so I couldn't even write down WTF, right? Or whatever. So that was brutal. That was brutal. It was like being a shut-in. You're like a vegetable that you can't communicate, and to me that was just the worst of the worst.
Okay, you have 9 lives, clearly.
No. Yeah.
But what's the most important thing that you've learned about life from this incredible journey that you've been on, that in a way you probably wouldn't have known without having gone through it? And how can the rest of us learn from your experience so that we can all live better lives?
It's hard to actually articulate that to people who haven't been through something like this, but to me, it is just that being in the moment. I mean, it's how do you choose to act at this particular moment in time to be fully present to whatever presents itself in a way that you can optimize it. And for me, I was never about that. And I still struggle with, getting back on the iPhone or, whatever, zoning out at TV or something. And then I think, okay, that's not why I'm here. Why I'm here is, having a dialogue with Stu. It's, interacting with people and choosing to go and do that and be social and have relationships and make them meaningful and remember, what it is you appreciate about those people. So
being present.
Being present.
Meditation.
Meditation, yeah. And the visualization thing, which is really just you focusing all your energy in a relaxed mode into what you want, what you need.
To live in the moment. I heard this wonderful thing by Leo Buscaglia, who wrote this amazing book called Love. And just an extraordinary speaker. And he had this fabulous expression. He said, "Yesterday is a canceled check. Tomorrow is a promissory note. Today is cash on hand."
Right.
Spend it wisely.
Yes. Today is a present.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stu.
Thank you, Kathy.